These are books that I read in July and August, and I did film this video in 2 parts. There is a good mix of genres and also some books that I liked, but quite a few books that I was not a fan of. But let's go ahead and get right into the book reviews. The first book to talk about is The Book of X by Sarah Rose Etter. The main character, Cassie, she literally has a knot for a stomach. As she navigates a surreal and brutal world, from life on her family's meat farm to city work and love, she struggles with her body, societal expectations, and male dominance. Honestly, this book was very confusing to me. I could not make sense of what I was reading, and I do like a confusing, weird book. But there were specific reasons why this one didn't work for me. Plot points would be introduced and then they would be completely dropped as if it never happened. So I think this book is split into like 3 different parts. For example, in part 2, the main character gives birth to a baby. And then in part 3, they never mention that baby again. I don't know what happened to that baby. I could not tell if what I was reading was meant to be part of the world building or if it was supposed to be some sort of like metaphor dream dissociation that the main character is going through. Her family owns and works at a meat quarry. Meat grows in the ground. Other strange elements that just didn't make much sense to me. The main character, Cassie, really irked me. I was so frustrated with her choices, especially when it came to her desire for male validation and just the approval and attention of men who only treated her with disrespect and cruelty. There's another scene in this book where the main character literally buys half of a man. So like from the waist up, she buys a human man. That's another plot point that is just completely forgotten. And I kept waiting for that to somehow tie back into the story, and it never did. There were so many scenes like that that just ended without any explanation or context. I was taking this book at face value. If this book was meant to reflect dissociation, then I wish that the writing had made that more obvious. As I said, I do really like books that are surreal and metaphorical or portraying ungrounded characters that are on the fringes of reality, but this one did not come together in a way that worked for me. The next book to talk about is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. On Goodreads, it is tagged as fiction, contemporary, and with mental health. This novel follows Martha, a woman who senses something is wrong with her, but can't pinpoint what it is. Martha eventually discovers the truth about herself, but too late to reclaim what she truly wanted. Okay, so my biggest issue with this book was the main character. Yes, this main character was largely undiagnosed throughout her life and on an incorrect medication, but then she does get the correct diagnosis, which is never named, by the way. They don't say what her diagnosis is. And she gets on the correct medication, and she starts behaving worse than ever. I don't know why the diagnosis is not named. I listened to this on audiobook. Whenever they would like name the diagnosis, they would say X. One of the main issues I had with the main character, Martha, was her relationship with her husband, Patrick. Throughout the book, Patrick is written as kind, patient, and supportive, and yet Martha treated him with open resentment and even cruelty. The book frames their relationship as mutually destructive. There's even a part where each of them says how they ruined each other's life, which made no sense to me because in no way did Patrick ruin Martha's life. To me, this felt like gaslighting. I do understand that mental illness affects behavior and relationships, but that does not excuse abuse. Martha's actions toward Patrick were abusive, and the book never fully acknowledges that. There's no accountability for her and no moment where she directly names or owns up to how she treated him. That said, there was one part of this book that I did like, and that was towards the end when Martha is really in a very deep depression. She reaches out to her mother, who she's had a very rocky relationship with, and she ends up calling her mom every morning. Her mom stays on the phone with her, and it's the only thing that helps Martha get out of bed that day. Martha never truly confronts her own behavior. If this had happened, I feel like I could have forgiven her for the mistakes that she made and the way that she treated people, especially her husband. But as it stands, I feel no sympathy for this character, and it kind of ruined the whole book for me. The first book I am going to be talking about is Nightmare in the Backyard. It's actually the second book in Jeff Strand's 𝐸 series. This is more of a anthology series, kind of like Goosebumps, where every single book follows different characters. The first one was like more psychological and supernatural, which I love. It Watches in the Dark follows two siblings, and they go on like a whitewater rafting trip. They get into an accident in the water, and their dad gets hurt, and they are in the middle of nowhere. So the children have to figure out what to do. So they start walking through the woods. Randomly, they find this town, but this town is so creepy. The people are creepy. Red flags around every single corner. It gets more and more tense and like dread-inducing as the book progresses. This book, Nightmare in the Backyard, we're following a group of friends who go camping in their backyard. And over the course of the night, they have to fend off giant tentacles that sprout out from the dirt. So essentially, it's like a giant octopus or something is attacking them, some sort of monster. I don't know, I just didn't find it scary. It was like laughable to me. I guess I went into this one thinking it was going to be scary because the first one was very scary. It's just instantly tentacles sprouting out of the dirt, attacking these children. It left the remaining like 200 or so pages of this book to feel very redundant. And that was my biggest complaint, was how repetitive this book was. There was almost like the same scene playing out over and over again. They are fighting the tentacles as they're trying to escape. There is like a reason why they are unable to get out of the yard. They're trapped in there. That was one thing that I did like about this book, was seeing these kids trying to problem solve. That one little aspect that I liked was often overshadowed by the very cringy dialogue. Sometimes when I read a book from an author that I dislike, I'll have a hard time picking something else up from them. I've read 2 books from him that I really loved. I have also read an adult horror book from him called Clowns vs. Spiders. I love that one. I thought it was super fun and creepy, also creative. So I would give a try to the 3rd book in the series. So I think there is still a potential with the series, possibility that there will be future favorites. Let's move on to the next book that I read in August, Annihilation by Jeff VanderMeer. I've heard about this one, that it is very weird and surreal and dreamlike. I love all 3 of those things. I thought that this book was gonna be like made for me perfect. So we are following 4 women who enter the mysterious and isolated Area X. Tasked with exploring and documenting the region, they encounter bizarre, unknowable life forms. There were some things I liked about it. There were some things I did not like about it. After finishing it, I feel like it just immediately left my brain. Like, I literally have no memory of how this book ended, which is crazy. Like, I read this a month ago and it's like, did I even read that? After the midpoint of this book, that is when I felt like the book really started to drag. I liked the concept of Area X, how especially that it is slowly expanding. It will take over the whole world. It seems impossible to solve for and inevitable. I liked the idea of a surreal, hostile landscape. Maybe we're trapped in the wilderness, or maybe it's like an icy, like barren Arctic wasteland. The environment that the characters are in being hostile and attacking them. I liked the sense of isolation. The 4 women who get sent into Area X on this expedition, they are completely alone. They don't have contact with the outside world. As they start to learn, they really cannot even trust one another, and they definitely cannot trust their surroundings and what they are seeing. That was my favorite thing to read about in this book, because it was so uncomfortable. When they started to realize that they could not trust one another and there's some shady stuff going on, that was my favorite part. And that was when finally like my attention got hooked. Unfortunately, all of the characters pretty much end up dying. And once they died, and this happens pretty early on, I was so bored. I was so bored. It felt like after that happened, like there was no plot. It was just the main character roaming around Area X, examining things and having like flashbacks to her life. I always hate flashback portions in books. Like, I just want to stay in the present moment. Overall, okay, I rated it 3 stars. I still think it was a good read and a good book. The fact that I just can't remember huge portions of it and that it didn't really leave any sort of impression or strong feelings with me, that's a 3-star book. There's nothing that I absolutely hated about it. Still a good read, but might not continue in the series. The next book I read in August is called Willowes by Sylvia Townsend Warner. We are following a woman who breaks free from a stifling life of family duty to live independently in a quiet village. With a cat and a pact with the devil, Lolly finally claims the autonomy she's long been denied in this wry feminist classic. It was originally published in 1926. There were some aspects of this that really clicked with me. For instance, seeing a woman rejecting social norms and finding independence. Love that. The writing could be very upbeat and witty. There were some very funny moments, but it was also bogged down with a lot of exposition. I want the book to get to the point, you know, like I don't need all that background. Just throw me in the middle. Throw me in the middle. I will be fine. And I will catch up. Initially, I checked this book out from the library in physical format and got maybe like 14 pages in, but it was so slow that I put it back down and did not want to pick it back up again. But I was able to find the audiobook through my library, thankfully, and I listened to it on my daily walks. In order for Lolly, her actual name is Laura, but everybody calls her Lolly, which I think is so cute. In order for her transformation to pay off, we needed to get that exposition and see where she started, where she came from, how she was very conservative and modest. She had expectations of her and she performed those expectations. She craves nature, solitude, and independence. She moves away from her family to a small country village where she finds freedom. And that was my favorite part of the book and when it picked up the most for me. There was a portion in the middle there where I thought this was gonna be a new favorite. I thought it was gonna be a 5-star. I loved seeing Laura moving to this village and like becoming independent. I felt like the portrayal of living in this lush countryside was very romantic. This was truly the high point of the book, except for this one scene where Laura tells off her brother because she has this intention in midlife that she is going to leave the family. So there was a point where Laura is telling her brother, like, no, I'm leaving. Like, I want to go somewhere else and I want to do something else and you guys don't need me anymore. Your kids are grown. So I'm leaving. And the brother is not having it. He is very like patronizing. He was so annoying. But Laura tells him, she puts him in his place and I loved it. Oh my gosh. That was the point where I was like having that physical reaction where I was cheering. Back to the middle portion where she's like living in the countryside, enjoying her best life. I felt like I was really there experiencing the lovely nature with her. It's very calming. It takes a very weird turn. Initially, Laura had found like all this independence and freedom. And there's a part in the book where she sort of starts to regress. That aspect really frustrated me and I was like yearning for her to be more vocal like she was with her brother earlier on. Laura becoming a witch and meeting Satan was what I thought was going to be like the climax, most amazing part of the book. It turned out to be a lot more anticlimactic than I had been expecting, but it takes until 70% of this book. Then she speaks to the devil a few times and they have a few philosophical discussions on women and personal freedom, which I did actually enjoy, but I had hoped for a bit more because the climax of this book is basically a conversation. It's more literary, which like good and great and everything. It was saying something really powerful and important. And I do acknowledge that and logically I can see that. I think I might even find myself in time like wanting to reread this, craving going back to that quiet countryside with Laura, that portion in the middle where she first moves to this new village. It's so atmospheric. It's like lush nature and beautiful, like I don't know if it's set in fall, but it just reminded me so much of fall. I read this in August, so I know like fall's coming. There's already leaves on the trail a little bit and it was like perfect. It was atmospheric. It was everything I wanted. Overall, 3-star, but like I said, maybe we'll raise it to a 4-star in the future. So the next book that I read in August, Nobody Is Ever Missing by Catherine Lacey. This one is a like contemporary literary fiction, but it also has a lot to do with mental health, something that I really gravitate towards reading about. I'm very interested in. I want to relate to characters who have been through things. In Nobody Is Ever Missing, the main character, Illyria, abruptly abandons her life in New York to wander through New Zealand, hitchhiking and drifting through the lives of strangers while grappling with grief and inner turmoil. As her mind unravels, she conceals her growing instability beneath a calm exterior, questioning whether anyone can truly know her or if she even exists. I did enjoy this overall. It is very chaotic and dreamlike. I think this book, what's the rating on Goodreads? Rating on Goodreads is a 3.28, so not very good, okay? I can see a lot of people hating this book. I liked the chaos. I liked the fever dream quality to it. I enjoyed the stream of consciousness spiraling that this main character is going through. Seeing where this main character was going to end up next, because she is like drifting, okay? She goes to New Zealand. She literally abandons her life. She doesn't tell a soul. She's married. She doesn't tell her husband. She just buys a plane ticket and goes to New Zealand. And he's like, where did you go? You know? She doesn't know anyone there. She hitchhikes. She doesn't have transportation. She has no means, but she needs to get away. It's like urgent. Like, I need to leave. There is not a lot of plot. This is mostly aimless wandering and the main character ruminating. The ending of this book did not have a clear resolution whatsoever. It kind of reminded me, honestly, of the ending of Bunny by Mona Awad, but I think it made sense for the narrative. There's so much turmoil there. So this is a very depressing read because this character is very dissociated from herself. The main character is facing extreme exhaustion, avoidance, and detachment from her life. She is constantly circling past traumas in her mind over and over again. I like how this author approached the actual writing of this book. There were very long, drawn out sentences. That made you feel like you were really experiencing the anxiety and spiraling mind that the main character is going through. One thought leads to another, and it's confusing and exhausting. I think that really exemplified what real anxiety and depression can feel like. I wish I knew what happens next to this main character. Like, I want to know. And same thing, like, this is reminding me, the more I think about it, of Bunny. Oh, and Bunny is one of my favorite books. I want to know, like, what happens to this main character next. This is somebody who is severely mentally struggling. Where are they going to end up? Like, is she going to be homeless? When your physical situation is not stable, how are you ever going to begin to piece together whatever's going on mentally for you? You can't. And so I'm really worried about her. I want to know, where does she end up? What happens to her mental state, and does she find any reprieve? Does she find any help? This one will stick with me. And you know what? Like, as I'm talking about this, there was nothing I didn't like about it, and I'm gonna raise it to a 5-star. Because I think it was special, I think it was different. The more I talk about it, the more I like it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens when you are talking about books you've read. You either end up liking them more, or you realize how much even more you dislike them. The last book that I read in August is called The Upstairs House by Julia Fine. We are following new mother Megan, who is physically and emotionally unraveling when she begins seeing the ghost of Margaret Wise Brown, who is the author of the children's book Goodnight Moon. As Megan struggles with postpartum isolation and guilt, she's pulled into a ghostly feud that threatens both her sanity and her newborn's safety. The main character might be haunted. Is all these weird, creepy things actually happening, or is it all in their mind? So the main character is in academia. She was writing a dissertation on Margaret Wise Brown, if I remember correctly, and that is the ghost. The book was often broken up by these chapters that I think were meant to be the main character's dissertation. There was also historical flashbacks and sudden perspective shifts to Margaret Wise Brown. Like we would follow her perspective. It pulled me out of the story. It broke my reading momentum. Also the pacing. There were some interesting moments early on where we see the main character Megan starting to experience this unreality. I was waiting for it to deepen and develop even further into madness, similar to the one we just talked about, Nobody's Ever Missing, where she really starts spiraling, okay? And by the end, like she's really far gone, but it quickly fizzles out. And I think that was probably due to the overemphasis on Margaret Wise Brown, especially in the second half of this book. There is a focus on her life and then also her friend slash partner, Michael, who is a woman. The second half of this book focuses less and less on Megan, the mother who is experiencing all this, and more on Margaret and Michael's life. I felt like I was reading two different books at times, so I wish like the author would have picked a focus. Talk to me about Margaret Wise Brown or talk to me about Megan's experience. The main character Megan really frustrated me. It was very irritating to me to see her not ask for what she needed, because she was struggling as a new mother with this newborn baby, especially when it came to her relationship with her husband. I wondered why, of any dead historical figure, this author chose Margaret Wise Brown. Why did the author choose Margaret Wise Brown in Michael Strange? Michael is a real person as well. I did not see the connection between their lives and Megan's experience. So that's why I didn't understand, like, of anyone, why did you choose these two people? Often something that was like haunting Megan, they referred to it as Michael's anger. A door would get like really hot, or the windows would open and she'd be like, it's Michael's anger. And I felt like that was so random. It was strange, it was bizarre. There is this slight twist at the end, and it's that twist. Like the twist didn't work for me, you know? Like it felt so random and just unsatisfying. Was this a ghost? Was this in Megan's head? And I feel like it had been very solidified, one of those things. And then at the end, it makes you question it again. And that bothered me. It just felt pointless. Like what was this for, you know? That was The Upstairs House. I rated it 2 stars. It was like the main character not being more assertive for what she needed. And at the end, like her character arc, the way that her life ends up, oh my gosh, it like makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. It ended on a poor note. Okay, you know what? I am raising Lolly Willowes to a 4-star, because after talking about it, I agree that should be a 4-star. So we had like a mixed bag this month. There were some really good ones. There were some like middle of the road. That's what you get. That's what you get with reading. You never know what you're gonna get. You can read the synopsis and think like, this sounds perfect for me, and then read it and be totally let down. And that happens to me a lot, but that's okay. I will keep trying. I'm really excited that I have been reading so consistently lately. I had quite a break this year where I stopped reading. I'm working on a gallery wall for our living room. We went to Goodwill yesterday and I found a bunch of cool stuff from the thrift store. I ended up painting some of them, but I'm going for like creepy, antique, vintage, gothic. But that is what's going on with me, okay, you guys? I've been filming this video. Oh my god, how does this happen? I've been filming this video for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like to. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.